3-6. On your list, we're not going to cover every cedar on your list, but I've listed some of the more common ones that you might run into. But this one is called Holmstrup. And I believe it was developed in Western Canada. Now it's been tied up for the winter. You can see the tying that we've done. That's to hold all the branches in. We've talked about that in class, right, because of the snow load, and that snow that we had was just indicative of potential problems. If this plant was covered in snow getting wet today would spread it apart completely. But the Holmstrup cedar, and if you look at the one behind you, you can see that it hasn't been tied up, are really quite narrow and fastigiate in form. There are lots of cultivars of cedar. If you look through your Conan's catalogs, you'll see, I don't know, probably 25, 30. And if you actually went down there, you would probably find about 100, because they don't list everything in the catalog. And there can be quite a few like this that you would have a difficult time telling the difference with. But this is one that's used as a specimen plant, or could be used as a hedge material. And I always find that the pyramidal forms are much better to use as hedges than the straight species. Often you'll see in the spring signs go up, especially if you drive up north, hedge cedars, right? And people are digging them out of the bush, and they're very kind of thin and sparse and narrow. They don't make really that great a hedges, so you're better off actually getting a field-grown cultivar like this, where it's naturally thick, to the point where you can see on the inside that it begins to shed as well. So these can get quite tall, as you can see there. They can get upwards of about 10, 15 meters, somewhere in that range, and not very, very broad. You can clip them, prune them. They respond well to that. There is a problem, however, when you're shearing them. If you went along like this and sheared them, you can get browning at the tips. So the absolute correct way to prune cedars is with a secateur and taking off portions of the stem. That is not done in the landscape industry because of the time that it would take to do it properly. But just be aware that sometimes when you do shear like this, you can... Sorry?
Is that why it's brown, really?
Yeah, you can get browning because you've cut across the tops of some of the individual leaves.
I was told going in from the inside is like how to prune cedars when I was looking. You want to start from the inside.
Yeah, you're going to go in here and take out like a portion.
Instead of like just...
Yeah, and that's who taught you that, Bill? Shannon. Oh, good. Yeah. Well, she taught you right. Yeah, you go in here and take out these little branches, right, in the overall form. Cedars, unlike yews, which are behind you, which we haven't studied yet, which are going to be on an upcoming walk, will be one of our last walks, will be the taxus and there's another group we have to study. They regenerate. These do not regenerate. That means if you take these back to really old wood, they're not going to regrow. And what is old wood? Well, old wood would be where there is no green. So if I went back in here and took it back to kind of a branch there is not going to be a new shoot that occurs. The yews behind you, the taxus, I can take those right back to a stump. Like that. I can take that big pyramidal yew, that Taxus cuspidata capitata there, back to a stump like that, leave it, and it will regrow. So taxus have the ability to regenerate from old wood. Thuyas do not. And you see this sometimes when hedges have been laid bare because of salt, etc., along the sides of the highway, and they're not salt tolerant. And you get these big bare spots, and then people come along and say, okay, well, if I got a bare spot there, I got this hole in the hedge, I'm going to take the top off as well, and it's going to force everything to fill in. Well, it isn't. What's going to happen is you're going to have a dead hedge. All right, so they do not regenerate. You can top them. We can cut the top off and the top will be replaced, and they do that with hedges sometimes. They actually cut the tops off. We've got a black cedar hedge at Cuddy's that we've taken the tops off a number of years ago to force it to thicken up below. Right, but I certainly wouldn't do it here. When you look at these, you'll see, and this is common in the pyramidal cedars, is they have multiple leaders, and that's really unavoidable. And what happens here with the wet snow is they start to fall apart. Easy solution is to get up there, ideally to cable the two branches together, but otherwise just to tie them together periodically using a twine that's will break down, not polypropylene. Okay.